All right, guys, welcome back. This video is for the final part of this section, which is questions I have for discussion section. If you remember in the very beginning of this page, it says, we're doing this, we're annotating because we're going to engage in a Socratic seminar, AKA a type of class discussion. And so one of the ways to prepare for that, so we're preparing, is to develop questions that you want to talk about. So for this section, you're going to jot down at least 1 to 2 questions you would like to bring up during a class discussion. Your question should promote a deeper level thinking. So we want those meaty questions, not the who, what, where, but it's the why and the how. And you can use, if you're like, oh man, I don't know how to, ask a question. We've included some question stems to get you started.
Right.
Okay,
And there,
go ahead.
Go ahead. If you think about a question and you say, what was Alfonso holding when he was shot? I can answer that in a word. That's a hanger. He was holding a shirt. He was holding a hanger. Those are not the questions that we're looking for because that doesn't spur a discussion. What you need is you need the question that it totally depends on whoever's answering to answer. You need those kind of questions because that person puts their background and their knowledge into your question. So for instance, I could ask a question, Ms. Cockcroft could answer it, get it completely right, whereas Ms. Farrar could have a completely different answer and hers is just as right as Ms. Cockcroft's. Those are the questions that we are looking for, that we are hoping that you can give us.
And it's something that we naturally do as human beings. I think sometimes when we go in a classroom and we discuss text, we also all of a sudden think, oh my gosh, what if I'm wrong? But when we're out with our friends or we're talking about a movie, we often ask those deeper level questions. We often want to tell a story and our perspective and what's happening. So like she said, you can't just say, what was he holding? That's easy. But you could say, why would Medina choose a hanger? Like, what does that say about today's society and what's happening? Now you have opened the door, and then I can talk about all my connections and so forth. Okay, so we're still in chapters 1 through 3, see how we're working our way down. And when we're done with 1 through 3, we're gonna have to come back to the top and work our way down for chapter 4. So here is the question I have for discussion section. Do you want to go ahead and read those questions?
So the first question is, why would the author start the book with the moment that Alfonso gets shot and then the next page act like nothing has happened?
That's a good question. We're not going to answer these questions because we want to be able to discuss them when we have a scratch.
We could answer the questions, but then the connection would be like what happened earlier, and we would just be like frozen.
Yeah, there you go. Why would the author reference such legends as Harriet Tubman, Ralph Ellison, and Frederick Douglass? And then
what could the author want us to notice about it?
He does that very purposefully. Authors do certain things for a very specific purpose. And he didn't just mention Harriet Tubman because she was a Black historical figure. There's something about her that relates to what's going on in the text. You got to figure out what you know about that background information to figure out what Medina might be saying.
And this is the thing is, we know that he's in Harlem. We know that he's in New York City. Most people, when they think about New York City, think about the Statue of Liberty. He hasn't mentioned the Statue of Liberty not once. And so sometimes it's not always about what he's talking about. It's what the author doesn't bring up. So what does the Statue of Liberty represent? And why, like, if it does represent that, why wouldn't he even mention it if he's from New York? So these are the questions that we're looking for. He purposely put Harriet Tubman in there, but he didn't put the Statue of Liberty. That's a discussion.
And now I really want to talk about it, but I'm not going to, because that you just made me have like
maybe we can decide, maybe we can say that if enough people, I don't know, do something, we could have a coffee discussion about that question. But I wouldn't just do that as a freebie. They would have to earn that.
They would have to earn that, but that's a good question. And now I've just that's the other thing about the Socratic seminar. The questions that you ask often give other people epiphanies, like, now I get something on a whole new level. And that is the point of a Socratic seminar. That's the point of discussion. It's not to say who was right or, you know, ooh, that was a right answer. It's to further your thinking.
That's the point of ELA, English language art. We discuss it. It helps another person come to that decision, come to another question. This is why we discuss things. This is why it's not good enough just to give a minimal answer. You got to add that depth.
For sure. And then the last thing is, what could the author want us to notice? And what I think is interesting about this question is you're going back to the author. Why did the author do these things? Always go back to the author's purpose, because that's where you get some really interesting conversation. It doesn't have to be for every question, but trying to ask those kinds of questions will help you. All right, so remember, you're doing that for every single section. And you're going to notice, I think we said this before, but some might be just chapter 4, but some might be a longer section because they go together.
I think the biggest section that you're going to run into is maybe 3 or 4 chapters, but those are the ones with the really short chapters where, you know, it's maybe just like chapter 9, maybe chapter 9 is a page long.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. All right, come back. We got one more video, I think, after this, and then you should know everything. You should be successful.